Hello and welcome back to the Wasteland, everybody. Hello and welcome back to New Vegas. Today we're going to be going over the top 10 explosive weapons, at least in my opinion, in Fallout New Vegas. This is going to include every type of explosive weapon, not including explosive ammo that goes to non-explosive weapons, so like the explosive 50 cal won't be on here. This is in no particular order, but let's begin at our number 10 spot, which is Frag Grenades. Frag Grenades are a pretty solid staple of explosive builds in general. They do decent damage per hit. Even with a non-explosive build, they actually do pretty good damage. They have a pretty good explosion radius too. They're very common. It is really common to either buy these from merchants or just find them laying around the Wasteland. You can also find them in the grenade bouquets, which is great. They're also pretty good outside of combat purposes too, because they sell for a lot and don't weigh very much. So even in a non-explosives build or a strictly non-explosives build, you can sell these for a decent amount of money, which is a bonus. Everything about the Frag Grenade is just really nice to have, and they're a really good weapon to get in the early and mid game, because they can kind of just carry you with an explosives build, or again, even without an explosives build, they're still pretty nice to have. Coming in at number 9, we've got the grenade launcher. The grenade launcher is a pretty fun weapon. This is basically the grenade rifle, but you get 4 shots in it. It is a big pump action China Lake style grenade launcher, which is really cool. These are kind of rare to find. There's not a whole lot of places around the map where you can get them. You can buy these as well from a couple of places, and you can steal these from the boomers, I believe. And they do pretty good damage per shot, pretty good damage per second, because you can have fast follow-up shots, and they do work as a pretty good general purpose grenade weapon or a general purpose explosive weapon, because the 40mm grenades are not impossible to find. You can find them all over the Wasteland. You can also buy them from plenty of merchants too, so they are one of the more readily available, as well as with the Gunner's Arsenal DLC and just with the regular game. You can get quite a few variations of the explosive. The only problem with this is a problem with a lot of explosive weapons. They don't work terribly indoors, because it's really easy to blow yourself up with, but this isn't gonna just outright kill you like a fat man or something. Coming in at our number 8 spot, we have Mercy. Mercy is the unique grenade machine gun, and this one also fires the 40mm grenade, which is different than the regular grenade machine gun that shoots the 25mm grenade. This does have a heavy skill and strength investment to get, as well as this is probably one of the most difficult weapons to get in the entire game, since you do need to go into one of the most dangerous areas in the game. You can find this in Deadwind Cavern, which is just infested with deathclaws and all sorts of different types of deathclaws. It is very scary. Deathclaws indoors are always very terrifying in this game. This one does really good damage per shot, does a lot of damage per second because you can fire out the grenades really fast. It technically has a really high crit multiplier at like 13.5 times, although it has no crit damage, so I don't know what the point of the crit modifier is, but whatever. It doesn't weigh that much for a heavy explosive weapon, only coming in at 15, so if you have heavyweight, you can cut that down in half, and it has a lot of item health. It takes a long time for this weapon to break. It is a very strong weapon, and definitely more of like an endgame explosive weapon, but it is just really difficult to get because, again, you have to get past all the deathclaws one way or the other. Coming in at our number 7 spot, we have the MFC Grenade, or the Microfusion Cell Grenade. This you can actually make yourself. You can't find these anywhere, I don't believe, in the Wasteland. You do have to make these out of microfusion cells at a workbench. And you also need the Mad Bomber perk. The real advantage to this is that it only takes 3 cells per grenade, so they are extremely cost effective to make. They do okay explosive damage. They're not as strong of an explosive that you can get, but they're still good enough, especially for the cost investment for these. They only weigh half a pound like most of the explosives. These are just super readily available at any point. If you're doing a dedicated explosives run, this is going to be fantastic for the early and mid game. It's even going to be pretty decent in the late game if you just want to toss these at regular enemies too. They're not going to do incredibly well against really strong enemies, but they're going to do really well against any sort of the smaller enemies. Coming in at number 6, we have the Satchel Charge. The Satchel Charge is a unique weapon, or sort of a unique weapon, in Lonesome Road. You can find these laying around, and they're actually pretty dangerous in the Lonesome Road because they seem to have a very short fuse time and they blend in with the environment very well there. I always step on these things when I'm in the Lonesome Road. These do really high damage on explosion. They can do decent DPS, I guess, if you stack multiple of them up. This is a placed explosive, so you're going to put this down and hope enemies run across it, or bait enemies into running across it. It's really strong against melee type of enemies. You can make these as well, and you don't actually need Mad Bomber to get these. You just need like 25 explosives to make them, and they are super cheap to make too. They're one of the most cost-effective explosives to make on the workbench, and they're just really good for that role because they do high damage and they don't have that much investment in terms of skill and in terms of just resources required. Coming in our number 5 spot, we have the 25mm grenade APW. This one is kind of a unique weapon as well. It's only part of the Gunner's Arsenal DLC. However, you can buy these all over the place, as well as it's very common to find the extra parts for them since they are all part of the Gunner's Arsenal. This one shoots the 25mm grenade, which thanks to Gunner's Arsenal is actually pretty common. There's a lot of traders that usually have this or have some amount of this that you can get. This one holds a decent amount of shots. It fires fast, although it does low damage, but pretty high damage per second. This one does actually work as a really good general purpose weapon, and with a couple of the mods, it actually gets a little bit better. So the mods you can get are a drum magazine. This gets you 2 more ammo, so instead of holding 6, it holds 8. And then you can get a longer barrel to this, which works the same way as the grenade rifle barrel, giving you double the projectile velocity. Can be really useful for making a little bit longer range shots, as well as you can get upgraded internals, which gives it more condition. All of those are great things for this weapon, and it's pretty easy to stockpile a decent amount of 25mm. It's also not very difficult to find these on merchants, so repairing it even without jury rigging isn't a huge deal, and this just works very well as a general purpose weapon. It's not going to hit as hard as some of the other explosive weapons that we've already talked about, but it is really good for just picking off regular enemies really at any distance with this. It also doesn't do too much friendly fire damage compared to some of the other explosive weapons, so that's kind of nice too. Coming in at our number 4 spot, we have the bottle cap mines. Bottle cap mines are another placed explosive that's very similar to the satchel charges. They actually do pretty similar damage. I think the satchel charge hits a little bit harder. This one doesn't actually require any skill investment to get the most out of it though, which is kind of nice. And these are actually really easy and cheap to make. You can only make bottle cap mines. I don't think that there's any in the game. I could be wrong about that. There might be a few that you can disarm and use. I know there is in Fallout 3 and in Fallout 4, but I don't remember if there is in Fallout New Vegas. This one does good explosive damage, only weighs a half pound, which is great, and it doesn't require too much materials to actually make. With Mad Bomber, it is even easier to make these because then you get more efficient ones where it just takes the overall cost down. And if you're just collecting all the things that you need for this, it's really easy to get. The only things that are going to weigh you down are the lunch boxes and the sensor modules, because bottle caps and cherry bombs don't actually weigh anything, so that's pretty cool. Coming in at number 3, we have Thump. Thump is the unique grenade rifle that you can find at the Boomer's place. This one's a fantastic grenade rifle, and it's a really good general purpose weapon for the majority of the game because you can get it so early. This one doesn't have very high requirements. It does good damage per shot, pretty good damage per second because it does reload faster than a standard grenade rifle, and it also already has the barrel extension on it, so you get faster moving projectiles, which means you can lob them a bit further. You can actually aim this pretty straight if you have the heave-ho perk as well, where it's supposed to only affect thrown weapons, but it affects all explosives, so you can shoot this pretty straight for quite a while and get a decent amount of value out of it. It once again shoots the 40mm grenade, so you have plenty of options there, and this doesn't eat through your ammo very quickly because it is single shot, so you can take your time and get pretty good damage from this. I would recommend you grab this one early on if you're doing an explosives only run because it is going to be a fantastic general purpose weapon. Coming in at our number 2 spot, we have the MFC Cluster Grenade from Mad Bomber. This one is a super fun and explosive weapon, and probably one of my favorites, just favorite weapon in the entire game. This one is just a bunch of the microfusion cell grenades that have been strung together, and you chuck this out. This is technically considered a placed explosive, but not really, because you throw it more like a regular thrown explosive. This can blow up when it's near an enemy, but if it doesn't and it just hits the ground, then these spread out across the ground and you can pick these up later as the microfusion cell grenades themselves. This does really high damage when these all explode out, and this one also is pretty efficient in terms of what you make it out of. It does require duct tape and scrap electronics, but beyond that it only requires 18 microfusion cells. So you're not spending a whole lot of resources to make these. They do really high damage. They're really good in just about every sort of situation, unless you're using this at very close range, which honestly most of the explosives aren't good then. But so long as you're fighting at a decent range with these are really good weapons, and they do a surprising amount of damage to basically everything in the game. And then coming in at number 1, we've got Annabelle. Annabelle is the unique missile launcher, which does pretty good damage per shot, decent damage per second. It is kind of slow because of the reload of the missile launcher. It's not super fast. And this does fire the missiles, which are actually pretty versatile. If you want to get some of the other missiles, this one can also be really good, like the high explosive. I think there's low yield, or maybe I'm mixing that up with the Fat Man nukes. This is probably the most accurate explosive weapon in the game in terms of long distance firing, because it's just really nice to use this as like a sniper rifle. Not really, because you only have to get kind of close with it, but it's super useful in that regard, and it's really good for engaging at a distance and then switching to something else at close range. This is a pretty useful go-to weapon. It's also more lightweight than a regular missile launcher at 15 rather than 20, so heavyweight once again can come in help here and just cut it in half. And then it's pretty manageable. Missiles are a bit heavy if you're playing on the hardcore difficulty, but you don't need to carry around a whole lot of them to be effective with this. And usually the way I'll use this is just engage with Annabelle and then switch over to something like Thump, or switch over to like the microfusion cell cluster and just throw those out. This is a little bit of a difficult one to get, sort of. You have to go to Black Mountain and kill one of the super mutants that has this, so you are going to have to take this off of somebody, which means they can also shoot you with it. And the super mutants in New Vegas are pretty tough, as well as they generally have pretty strong weapons. They can have light machine guns or super sledges and other pretty strong equipment too, so you got to keep that in mind. But this one I find to be pretty useful. Tell me what your 10 favorite explosive weapons are down in the comments below. I'd love to hear them. Thanks everybody for watching this. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye bye.